you're a great crier. Somebody told me that once. Is if you can like get through your thought while you're crying, you're a good crier.
I must look so ugly right now.
Welcome, Anna and Laura. Each of you hold different positions on the issue of abortion. Anna, you are pro-abortion access, and Laura, you are pro-life. But we are not in this moment to discuss or advocate both of your positions on this issue. Instead, we are here to talk about your individual experiences and feelings related to three powerful words that all humans are intrinsically or intimately familiar with: love, fear, and hope. The love I speak of is unconditional. Simply put, it is a selfless act offered freely without strings attached. It provides one with a sense of freedom and security, knowing that no matter how hard things get, it will not go away. It's altruistic because its actions are sacrificial and executed for the benefit of others. It offers acceptance and forgiveness because it knows people are not perfect. Think about a spouse, parent, child, friend, or relative who you love immensely. Anna, can you pick up the first box and ask the question inside labeled number 1?
Tell me the person you thought of and describe a moment when you felt and experienced their love at its fullest.
I think when you become a mother is the moment where you experience love from another human being without them having to do anything. And I think it can be one of the most profound experiences of love in the sense that you are instantly willing to do anything for that other person without them having to earn any of it. So I think for me, becoming a mother was when I first realized, wow, this is what it feels like to be willing to die for someone. Because I think you can feel that for someone who might share that love with you, in a romantic relationship or your husband and wife. But there are certain expectations that go along with that. So I think when you have a child, it truly is, it just rocked my world. You realize also how selfish a person can be. And I realized how selfish I was when I had my child. That kind of sounds weird, but you realize up until that moment how easy it is to think that you're loving others, but you're really just loving yourself. And I think for me, that was my experience, just realizing up until that moment, wow, I was able to love others, but to also spend most of my time loving myself. And now I have the opportunity to really put myself aside and to focus on this person who can't care for themselves, can't do anything for themselves. So it was definitely a profound love feeling and a different kind of love than I had ever experienced. I'm finished.
That was so beautiful. And I can only imagine that type of love. I'm not a parent yet, but I think about that type of unconditional love that you just described, and it sounds absolutely remarkable. And thank you for sharing that with me.
Thank you. Anna, tell me the person you thought of and describe a moment when you felt and experienced their love at its fullest.
Yeah, honestly, it's such a beautiful question, but the answer for me is actually kind of hard. Apologize. The love that is most fullest for me was the love that I felt from my mom. And so she passed away when I was about 13 years old. And, there was during those times too, where, when your mom is your caregiver, you become her caregiver. was very hard for me. But at the same time, those moments were so precious, to get to be with her in those last days. And I remember, that kind of love, the loss feels so deep. And even when she was sick, I would, 10 years old in my bed thinking, I don't know what I will do if she doesn't make it, because the love was so deep. And she was such a strong person, and yet so fragile at the same time. And it's just so remarkable how death ends a life but not a relationship, because I feel like my love for her, has only grown more profound, because all the difficult moments that I have in my day, or the challenges that I face, or the issues that I fight for, I just think about the strength that she had to carry on in such ridiculous odds, being an immigrant, navigating, so many challenges that she faced, abusive relationships, becoming a mom, and then having twins, working at the same time. We didn't have a lot of money when I was growing up, but we had a whole lot of love. And it was just so remarkable that despite not having a lot, we had everything we needed. And then to lose that, at such a young age has always stuck to me, but it's also my inspiration to help others not have to go through that same experience, because I want every kid to have a parent, every parent to have a kid, and no parent should have to see their child die. Like my grandmother saw my mom die, and no child should have to take care of their parent because, there's no one else to do that. And so that type of, though it was such a traumatic experience as a child to go through that, it was also such a profound experience of love and grief that is unmatched by, I think, any other love I will ever have. Mm-hmm. And that love gave me strength to navigate the loss, because I know that even though she's not physically with me, that love is always with me wherever I go. And so as I heard that prompt, I think about her. And I think about the unconditional love she had for me, and the one that I reflected back. And, the first time I met her sisters, when I went to Iran to bring my mom's ashes there, the first, things they said was, you look just like your mom, you have her hair, you have her mannerisms. And so that really sat with me as something to be proud of. But again, it was as if she was just giving me this, hug, out of the sky. And so that is the love of my life. And I am now finished.
I'm so sorry for your loss. And I can see why you wear that beautiful necklace. That is amazing. That's amazing that you were able to take care of her at such a young age. That's truly amazing. And I'm sure that the time you had with her was very precious. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Okay, Anna, if today was the last day of your life, how would you express your love to them?
I have a lot of love languages, but I think the one that's most profound to me is time, because time is not only precious but limited. And when you have a life like mine, my schedule is so ridiculously packed that sometimes you don't feel like you can be the best friend or the best daughter or the best sister, because you're just constantly, serving others. And so if it was going to be the last day of my life, I would be incredibly intentional in spending time with the people that I love. And, I think to people who are no longer on this earth, and you always ask yourself, I wish I had more time, to just ask them that piece of advice or see how they're doing, or just be present. Even if you're just sitting next to each other watching TV, it's just that fact that you made an effort to be present. And so I think that for me, that's what I would not want to take for granted. And that's what I would want to do, is just spend time with the people that I care about and the people that I love. It doesn't matter what we're doing, as long as we're together. and to hold on to that wherever happens to me next, to just know that that's, what I'll always hold on to, what I'll always remember is that we had the time together. So I am finished.
I can totally relate to that. And I think that it really does order your priorities when you think about like the last day. If you only had one day, it really whittles everything down, right, to the people that are closest to you. So that was awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you. So Laura, if today was the last day of your life, how would you express your love to them?
So when my son was born, and I have two boys, and he was the first, and his name was Hero. We named him that because we truly felt like God spoke to us and told us that he was going to be someone who would lay down his life for others, and a true servant, a true hero is a servant, somebody who would be willing to give his life for someone else. Not that I'm wishing that for my son, but we just felt like he would be a real go-getter, like he would cut through things that were not important to be able to put others first. And I think what I would want to do, obviously I would want to spend every second with him. If I knew it was my last day, I would want to spend every second with him and with my other son and with my husband. But I think I would want to tell him some things. I think the first thing I would tell him is that his life has value. His life matters. I believe every life has a purpose, that we all have a God-given purpose. So I feel like for him that his challenge would be to go and discover what that purpose is. Like, go and figure it out. Don't be discouraged by hardships or by failures. Failures are they're often just doors that close to help us know what direction we need to go in. So I think I would spend the day just pouring into him, telling him how loved he is, and how he has so much value, and how he has, my husband and I believe that every person also has seeds that are planted in them. And it's our job to figure out what those are, that as we try out different things, that those seeds will grow and develop and start to come out, start to blossom. And that's when you start to see, oh, I am good at this, or I am made for that, or I'm passionate about this, or this breaks my heart. I want to do something about that. So I would encourage him to just keep seeking those things out and not base his value on, well, I thought I would do this and now I'm not successful. So, therefore whatever conclusion a young person would draw. And it's funny because I was actually thinking about that on the drive here. What would I have said to my younger self? And there's so many things when you have a child that you want them to know, because when you're young, you think that every failure, you can't really see past failure. It's very difficult unless you have another person in your life saying, no, keep going. Don't let that stop you. You need to keep going. So I think I would just want to encourage him to just keep going. I see that as it's such a huge issue among young people today, that when they hit a wall, if they didn't have that parent or other, significant adult in their life, like encouraging them and coaching them and telling them to keep going, I see that sometimes they hit a wall and they just stop and they don't know what to do. So I think that's probably what I would do, is just spend time just making sure he realizes that he's loved no matter what, that we don't expect him to be perfect, and that his job is to discover his purpose. I'm finished.
Well, thank you for sharing that with me. I can tell just how much you love your children and how much you want them to know that they are loved, even if you're not there to tell them that. And just the fact that that's how you would spend your final days on this planet, I think just speaks to who you are as a person and how much you care about the well-being of the people around you.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
Fear is an unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that someone or something is dangerous and likely to cause pain or threat. At times, fear can help us survive by preventing us from taking actions that can be detrimental to our life, spirit, and mind. But fear can also entrap and keep us from taking steps towards living out lives of meaning and purpose. It can encourage us to protect ourselves from the realities of genuine relationships and love by closing off our hearts, causing us to lock ourselves inside of safe, dark, motionless, airless coffins, which change us and make us less human, unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. When answering the next set of questions, think about a spouse, parent, child, friend, or relative who you love immensely. Laura, take the first question.
Anna, tell me about a moment in your life when the fear of losing someone gripped you. Describe the situation and emotion you felt.
Well, I promise I won't cry this time. But I mean, it definitely goes back to experiencing the loss of my mom. But I mean, thinking about it more intentionally, I, grew up in a very working class family, and my parents were always working multiple jobs. The time that I could spend with my mom and my dad was really precious. But there were even weekends where it was the three of us, my sister and my brother and myself, just home alone, which was not even probably legal. But my parents didn't have a lot of choices because we couldn't afford daycare or a babysitter. So we just entertained ourselves and made like frozen pizza. So my mom got home from Kmart late that night. And so her cancer journey was a long one. And we were very lucky to at least have health coverage. It wasn't always perfect. My parents carried a lot of debt due to my mom's medical experiences. But there were a lot of hospital waiting rooms that I was in, a lot of hospital cafeterias, a lot of just doctor's appointments, a lot of my mom trying to be a mom while she was taking chemo. And I remember when they installed a little port, on her chest so that she could take chemo and different types of drugs while taking us to the dollar store and just trying to, be the mom that she wanted to be. And then there were times where, we thought she was going to make it, but like in so many different cancer journeys, it comes back, and she went through some really serious surgeries. But again, it was just so interesting because like during all of that, I never believed she would be gone. And actually there were moments where she wanted to give me advice on like dating and on, my period, which hadn't even started yet, just all those like things that a mom would talk to their daughters about. And I actually refused to listen, not because I didn't want to, but I told her, you can just tell me this later. But because there was this moment for me that if I accepted what she was telling me as advice, then I would be accepting that she would no longer be here. And so I didn't want to consent to that agenda. I was like, no, you're going to be fine. You can tell me this later. It's not a big deal. And so one of my biggest regrets is like, I just didn't let her, share with me what was on her mind, because I feel like not only would have been really valuable, but I probably could have saved myself a lot of grief later of just the bad dating choices I made in life. I just, accepted her advice at that point. I probably would have just been prepared. But it was, thinking about losing her was just something I refused to accept. And I remember one day, my parents had bought a new home, and it was going to be our first time. My sister and I were twins. It was our first time having our own rooms because we shared a room together for most of our lives. And then during the time where we sold our first house and our second house was being built, there was a delay. And so we actually lived in a hotel for like 2-3 months. So it was really difficult. And the fact that my mom had to go back to the hospital, I actually remember thinking that was a good thing because the situation we were living in was really, really not good. So I almost felt like her in a hospital setting was better than where we were. And so she actually was discharged for about 2.5 days and went back into this deep coma. But in those 2 days, she was in her new house. And I remember helping her get up because she had to throw up with just the different medicines she was taking. And you don't really know what to do when you're like 13 years old, helping your mom like have that experience. But I remember her looking in the mirror and saying that she was so ugly because at that point she had jaundice and, lost a lot of weight. She actually did not lose her hair, which is like Iranian hair is like so thick, didn't go anywhere. But I remember looking at her and saying, "No, you're beautiful. You are so beautiful," which was the same thing she would always say to me, all through growing up and navigating, being a young woman in America. And so yeah, just that, like, I think of those memories and I hold on to them so dearly. But it was that loss of just like the fear of losing her and then having to accept it. But I have to say, when she passed away and I was, we were all with her in the hospital and I held her hand, it felt like a chapter was over, that at least we had an ending, because it was very, very difficult to navigate the unknowns. And of course, you want that person to survive. You want that person to be with you forever, or for much longer at least. But the fact that there was an ending, a conclusion, I feared it so much. The fact that it came, it was at least this sense of like acceptance. And now we can figure out, what does life look like, with her no longer with us, which is something I feared so deeply. And I had no choice but to accept it. But the fact that I was able to have that experience and accept that outcome, it also built a lot of resilience for me. And it made me much better to handle fear and to handle tough situations. And I tell folks all the time, the fact that I had that experience, I can be fearless in the face of anything else, because you will never have an experience like losing someone you love. And so, with that, I think I'm finished.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. And I do know what it's like to lose someone, but not my mom. So that, it is, I'm sure it's profoundly affected you. But thank you for sharing your heart.
Thank you. All right, Laura. So tell me about a moment in your life when the fear of losing someone gripped you. Describe the situation and emotion you felt.
So I grew up in a family of 7. There's 4 other siblings, and I fall kind of in the middle. I had 2 older brothers, an older sister and a younger sister. My older brother, Brandon, was the heart of our family. He was the comedian, the one who, when I would cry as a little girl, he was the first one with his arms around me, comforting me, trying to tell me a joke. He was always the one calling us. He would just always be interested in our lives. And as when I had my boys, as I got older, he started to take a real interest in them. He taught them how to fish. He would come down and they would go fishing together, and they really just started to grow an attachment to him. Unfortunately, my brother didn't take very good care of himself, and it's been about 2 years. Actually, the anniversary of his death was December. Just this past December has been 2 years. He collapsed, and I believe he did go to the hospital. He was up in Georgia. As soon as I found out, I packed my bags and I was in the car within an hour driving up, and just told my family, just just stay here. I just need to find out what's going on. And so he had a brain hemorrhage and was unconscious when I got there. He was already in a comatose state. So all 7 of us came together very quickly, like within a day. We had all traveled up to Columbus, Georgia. We all stayed at his house, and of course, when that happens, you run through your mind of all the possibilities, and of course, death is always the thing you fear most. And as the hours turned into days, and we didn't know what was going to happen, that's when all the memories start to flood back. All the things, and with the memories, all the things that we could have done and didn't do yet. All the things that we wanted to do with him. All the possibilities of what he would do with my sons. I mean, that was probably the hardest thing, because I got to experience my relationship with him, but they were just starting. They were really just starting a relationship with him. We were actually trying to get him to move down to Orlando so that he could be closer to them. And I think the hardest thing about that situation, but I'm also very grateful how it all ended up happening. I totally relate to how you're talking about when death comes, that there is a closure. And at least okay, I've done everything I can do, and now it's time to move on. We were there for a couple of days, and his son came. He has one son, and the question was, how long do we wait for something to change? And this is such a hard area in our modern medical and technological times now. It's such a gray and difficult area. Is when does someone actually pass away? When are they really gone? And I couldn't even really, after this experience, I couldn't really even say, okay, this is when it happens, because there is so much technology now that you're really able to keep a person, all of their organs operating. And in effect, they are alive, but it's artificial. And so it's very confusing. It was very confusing for our family. His son, who was only 22 at the time, was going to have to make the decision of whether to turn the machines off or not. And the rest of us were just horrified that this 22-year-old would have to make this decision and live with that decision for the rest of his life. So of course we were all, around the dinner table, just talking about this and trying to decide, okay, how do we talk to him about this? Because he was, I think in shock. He was not showing any emotion. So I know it was almost like there was a wall there, and it was very difficult to talk with him. So we had him over one night and just said, hey, can some of us share some of our thoughts about this with you, and would you hear us? Would you hear us out on this? Because he had already announced he had already went on Facebook and said, hey, if you need to come see my dad, just come and say your goodbyes now, because I've decided I'm going to take him off life support in 2 days. And so we just wanted to share some of our thoughts and feelings with him, because we believed, okay, we feel like we need a more definitive answer before we can decide, yes, we're making this decision that he can't make himself. And we didn't want his son to just live the rest of his life and maybe always look back on that moment and say, did I make the right decision or did I not? Like, did I not give my dad a chance? And what could have happened if I had not made that decision? That is the last thing we wanted him to experience. So we shared our thoughts, which were, hey, can we ask them to run some more tests? Is there anything else that we can do to make sure that he really is gone before you do this? And perhaps a test could give us the definitive answer so you don't even have to make that decision. So thankfully, the next day, the very next day after we had that conversation, they did a final test. I don't remember exactly what the name of it was, but it determined whether there was any even remote activity in the brain. And it also determined a few other things. When that test came back, it was conclusive. He was gone. And I'm so grateful for that moment, because even though it was devastating to our family, only days ago, he had, just in true fashion to himself, left me a voicemail that I've kept all this time, where he had called me and I had called him back, and he called me again and left another voicemail and was like, I don't even remember why I called you. I was just calling you to say hello. Just himself, like no reason other than just relationship, just the love that he had. And it was just 3 days later that he passed away. So I think in that moment, it was, I didn't realize how complicated death could be. Mm. I appreciate now, like, what a difficult decision that is for family members when someone's not able to decide that for themselves. I think my fear in that moment was, how long could this go on? I've heard of, people being on life support for years and years, and just that inability to have closure. It's just a very complex issue. So I have a greater appreciation for families that go through that now. But I also, it's amazing how grief there are good things that come with grief. And one of them is that you just value little moments more, like little moments with your kids and your loved ones. You value things that are said to you, and then you want to make sure to say the right things to those that you love, so that, if anything ever happened, they know where you stand. So yeah, thank you for listening to all that. I'm finished.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Laura. I can just completely empathize and really appreciate your point, and just speaking to how complex it is. And the main feeling I had from all of that was how hard it is to let go. And I think that's something all of us can relate to, is that it's just so hard to let go of someone you care about. And it just speaks to the love you have for the people around you. And I can only imagine how lucky he must have been to have you as a sister, and the days that he spent with your boys. That's gonna be with you and your family forever. And so thank you for trusting me to share that with me.
Thank you.
In the book, The Anatomy of Hope, How People Prevail in the Face of Illness, Dr. Jerome Gutman provides a beautiful description of hope. He describes it as the elevating feeling we experience when we see a path to a better future in the mind's eye. True hope has no room for delusion, and therefore acknowledges the significant obstacles and deep pitfalls along the path. Think about your life when you answer the next set of questions.
Tell me about an adverse moment in your life and describe the realities around it and the pathway you saw to a better future.
I've had many adverse times. I will actually speak to a time after my husband and I got married. So we got married in 2007, and we went on our honeymoon, came back, and the market crashed. We at the time we owned. I owned a home. He owned a home. His went quickly way underwater. And his renter bailed on him. And so we came back to some really difficult things. I should also mention that the day I got back from my honeymoon, I put my notice into my work. And then the market crashed. So our marriage actually started off in a very difficult place. I mean, we were committed to working through what was now like this really scary, unknown situation where he was a small business owner and I suddenly had no job because I left my job. In the midst of that, I was able to walk through a time where up until that moment, I had lived as if I could always make more money. I would spend and then make more, spend and then make more. I was a spender. My husband was always very conservative financially and had some investments, had some money set aside, had even saved up for our wedding ring, before he even met me. So, he was always thinking ahead and planning ahead. And I was not that type of person. But the hardship that I went through during that time was definitely a refining time, and it was a necessary time. When I look back on that, it's interesting because that experience is what put me on the path to what I do today. So before that time, like I said, I had been a spender. My dad was a spender. My parents were always poor. We always got a sit down right before Christmas. I feel like maybe it wasn't that often, but I feel like we always got a sit down to talk to us that, this Christmas is not going to be, it's going to be very, you're just going to get a few small things. I feel like we were never, even though we always had enough, there was always food on the table. I did always feel a lack. And, I do believe that there is a poverty mindset that can get passed down from generation to generation. And it's one of the things that I feel like I had to break during that time, that we went month to month not knowing what was going to happen to this other house, whether we were going to foreclose and they were going to come after us. And then also our current house we were living in, not knowing each month, were we going to be able to make the mortgage. My husband's business was marketing, and that's my background is marketing. That's usually the first thing to go when there's a downturn. So it was a very scary time where we just didn't know if we were going to lose everything and just have to move in with my parents for a little while, or what was going to happen. I think during that time I realized that I needed to allow my husband to do what he does best. And it was funny because I had started out doing the finances for a while, and then we both quickly realized I am not the person for this. Let me hand this to you. And for the first time in my life, I followed a very strict budget. We, were eating beans and rice several nights a week. I was no longer shopping whenever I wanted to. And then during that time, we later that year, because we got married when I was 34, I believe. I was like, all right, I am ready to have a child anytime you are. And so we wanted to start having children. So during that time, it was really over the next few years that we were in that recession, and everybody was feeling that. I think what I went through was not only having to resist the urges that I felt like fed me for a time. Like, I can do this and I can do that, and I'm very independent and I'm able to do whatever I want, and I'll just make more to be able to cover it. I think the transformation of me not being able to do that for a period of time, but actually submitting myself to limitations, was a preparation for being a parent. Because when you become a parent, you have this child who needs you every moment of every day. At least in the beginning, every moment of every day. And so all of your needs get put to the side for this life. And it still was a huge transition for me to make, but I think the preparation that I had up until then, by putting limits on myself, helped to prepare me for that. So through that experience, I did feel a hope that if I put limitations on myself, as long as I am working towards this vision, it's worth it. So I realized sometimes you have to make those sacrifices in order to accomplish this longer term vision. And I think once my husband and I were able to get on the same page with that, and able to save and able to pay off debt, we were able to, it was amazing what ended up happening is, with his house, we were able to do a deal with the bank where we were able to walk away with it and they were able to keep it. And then we were able to just, hold on to our house. I was deeply grateful for that option, and being, given grace, for having an asset like that just went underwater. So what I was going to do, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought, but what I was going to do was tie it into, so what I do now is amazing that I'm able to draw on that experience. What I do now in my church, I'm they call me a director of generosity, but basically what I do is I encourage other people to get a vision and to put limits on themselves just so they can accomplish this vision of generosity and giving. Because what I've discovered, and where my husband and I are now, is that we are able to be generous because we were able to put those limitations on ourselves for a while to accomplish a vision. And my husband's vision, which we have not gotten to this place yet, but my husband always talks about wanting to have a slush fund. He wants to have a slush fund of giving, like basically a foundation where we can say, look at this need over here, let's just throw some money at that. Or, the church needs a new building here, let's put some money towards that. Or this family's in need, let's just surprise them with something. I love that he's like that. That used to threaten me. I used to not like that when we first got married, because I perceived that as lack. Like, well, if you give to those people, then we're going to have lack. But what I've realized is the more that we're able to say, we don't need to do X, Y, Z, but now we're able to give to this, or we're able to accomplish this. There's so much value to, it really gives you freedom when you have the ability to give when you see a need. It's also the most joyful feeling in the world. And I am definitely not perfect at it. I'm not saying, oh, I'm so generous. But the times when we have been, the times when we've shared what we have been it's just been some of the deepest joy that I've had. So it gives, going through a hardship like that gives me hope that, I believe every hardship, there can be purpose in it if you learn from it. If you say, what am I supposed to learn from this? I think that you can also give hope to others who are going through that experience. If you don't lose hope yourself, if you don't sit in that hard situation and just pity yourself, but you keep walking through it, I think there will always be a time where you can then reach others that are walking through the same thing and give them hope. So I'm finished.
Well, thank you for sharing all of that. It definitely reminds me of going out of your comfort zone. It's kind of an interesting dynamic of, giving yourself boundaries with going out of your comfort zone, but that is the case. Mm-hmm. And it led you to not only take care of yourself and your partner and, maintain a sense of security, but then of course you are passing down those lessons to others around you. And now you're using it to do good for others in your church, in your community. And so that's an incredible journey of struggle to hope. And so thank you so much for sharing that with me.
Thank you. All right, so Anna, let me start that again. So Anna, tell me about an adverse moment in your life and describe the realities around it and the pathway you saw to a better future.
So I think a recent example for me was definitely the 2016 election year, because I just felt so disappointed in both political parties. I felt like I'm a registered Democrat. That wasn't my first choice. I actually was registered, no party affiliation. My parents are both Democrats. I would watch the debates, but we were so focused on just surviving. My parents were not super politically engaged. But I kind of grew up, caring about the underdog, caring about people that struggle. And so when I watched the 2016 election cycle, I just felt like there was a missing piece here. Like there's just, everything's hyper polarizing, everything's very political. There wasn't a voice being given to just what will it take to help people, right? And instead there are insults being thrown around. And also, like, as a person of color, I felt like a lot of the rhetoric was demonizing people who look like me. And that was really, really frustrating because my parents are immigrants. I remember my mom's citizenship ceremony and just how meaningful that was for her to go through that process and be able to vote and become an American citizen. And this country has given my family so many opportunities that, like, I feel like I'm American. I feel like, I deserve to live here. Like, this is a place the only place I've known to be home, right? But that election cycle, I felt rejected by a lot of the commentary, a lot of rhetoric, and the night that the outcome was settled, I woke up that next morning in tears because I just felt like, am I safe here? Like, can I walk outside and not, like, be okay? Or am I going to be told to go back to where you came from? Am I going to be made fun of? I grew up already feeling different as a brown kid in my school. Now, granted, I was really blessed to have a diverse school growing up in East Orlando, but there was a moment after the 9/11 tragedy where I began experiencing racism in a different lens. And folks would make fun of my nose or make fun of the fact that, like, Iranians are very hairy. So, I remember like the decision to start shaving my legs. And it was one where I was also trying to avoid being made fun of, because for some girls in my class, like, they didn't really have to. It wasn't so noticeable. For me, it was very noticeable that I'm a hairy person. And so, I always kind of felt like othered in different circumstances. And all of that just came rushing back after that election cycle. And so I woke up just, in this place of I guess displacement, like, what, like, am I still welcome here? Like, am I going to be treated with respect? And it was really powerful at that moment, because as I sat in my bed, like, holding back tears and thinking about this, the morning after, I heard my twin sister doing the same thing, because we lived together. And so we're twins, but I'm 5 minutes older, so I take that responsibility really seriously. So I ran over to her and I was like, "It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. Like we can't just crawl into a ball. Like we got to do something." And that day we had an interview with UCF. UCF wanted to interview my sister and I because we were both 30 under 30 nominees and whatever. And so my sister looks at me and she says, "Should we cancel this? Like, should we still do this interview? Do you feel okay doing it?" And I was like, "I don't think we should cancel things. Like, we just have to keep going and be ourselves and see what happens." And I remember having my hair and makeup done, and I started like crying. And these poor women were like, "What is wrong with her? Like, she's not getting married today. Like, why am I in tears?" But it was just really, really upsetting. And it felt like a place of despair. And again, disappointment in both political parties, because I didn't feel like the Democratic Party did a good job in, telling the story of people like me. Very, very elite vibes, which is not who I am by any means. And so that ultimately is what inspired me to make the decision to run for office, because I realized that we're going to have the same type of polarizing politics, the same type of transactional politicians, if we don't elect more everyday people to be in these positions of decision making. And of course, like so many women, I went to all my other girlfriends and I was like, "You should run for office. You should run for office. I'm not going to do it. That is crazy." And so, part of the hope that I found was the women around me saying, "Why don't you think about it? Like, why don't you try it?" And it was those women that, and I always joke that I have a lot of adopted mamas bears out there, like folks who, care about me, my professors, my teachers. And so it was with that sense of finding power in pain to say, okay, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put my name on the ballot, and we're going to redefine what it means to be a public servant. And we're going to show people from every political persuasion that you don't always have to agree with the person that is serving you, but you should trust them. You should trust them. You should know their values, and you should know that they are in a place of service for you and no one else. And it was in the moment of despair that I found that hope to be where I am today. And I'm very grateful for that. I mean, it was painful, and there are still so many struggles right now that we're facing, again, with all the political parties. But I still hold on to this piece of hope, looking at the people around me, the fact that if someone has the ability to love, then we're going to find something in common. We might not be able to talk about politics, but we can talk about how cute our cats are and how much we love, the favorite small restaurant down the street or whatever it is, right? And so I kind of hold on to that as my mantra in, trying to redefine what it means to be a public servant and trying to solve problems instead of creating them. And yeah, I think with that, I'm finished.
That was so good. I'm so thankful to learn about that, about you and how you got your start as a representative. So I'm sorry that you felt in danger and threatened. Like that's heartbreaking to me. That's heartbreaking. My great grandparents on one side were immigrants, and then a little farther back on the other side. And, truly, other than the Native Americans, all of us are immigrants. I'm appalled at people who forget that. And, I also, because I was a military brat and lived in different places a couple times outside the country, grew up around, and also when my dad was in seminary for a while in New York City, grew up around a rainbow of people and loved it, loved the food, loved the differences, loved all of the interesting sights and smells and colors and everything that's just different. I think that people can be afraid of it when they're not familiar with it. And that to me is heartbreaking, because they're missing one of the most amazing things about life. And that's just experiencing people that offer something different. So thank you for sharing that. I love that. Love that.
Okay, Laura, what is something that makes you feel hopeful right now?
You know, we live in the most interesting times right now. Interesting, unprecedented times. I know everybody loves that word now because we've heard it so many times, but COVID has truly changed our world forever. And I think in many ways, some very disturbing ways where people have been isolated. People have, because of their isolation, I think people are more fearful of other people. I think people's fear has grown. I think for many people, fear has just run away with their lives, and now everything is fearful. And that's that is definitely, you know, that's a huge concern. It's a concern for the next generation, for sure. The kids that have grown up in this, the kids that, you know, there were preschoolers in our church that once they finally came into the childcare area, they didn't know what to do because they had never been around other kids. And like you get to see, wow, like this is going to affect this generation. At the same time, I have so much hope because I see some of the good that has come out of this, at least in my little world. You know, I know there are lots of challenges everywhere, but for my husband and I, we've seen some opportunities that have happened with our own kids and with some of the youth in our church and in our neighborhood, where we've decided that this was the summer after March 2020. You know, when everybody thought, oh, things are going to start getting better, and then they didn't. My church asked us, would you guys host some youth nights at your house? Like, would you just have some kids at your house? And we were like, sign us up. Yes, our kids need that. We really want to do that. So we started doing that, and it started with just, you know, a few of the neighborhood kids coming over every Wednesday night, and it quickly grew. And now we have like on any given week, we have like 20 to 30 kids coming to our house, having so much fun. Like, they're mainly outside. Like, we're very blessed. We live in Apopka. We found this little slice of heaven, and just lots of trees and lots of running around space. You know, they're constantly like doing kid stuff, like they lit our Christmas tree on fire the other night, and it was an amazing sight. It was so fun. They just play the silliest games, and I mean, they just bring so much joy to us. Like, I love hosting it. But what I see in them is they're getting to be kids. They're getting to just forget about everything that's going on right now, and all the pressures and all the anxiety that their parents might be having that's coming onto them. And they're just getting to forget that for a while, and just getting to be a kid and have relationships, and not being told like, oh, you have to stand over here. You know, just not being so directed, but just being able to be themselves. They're also being listened to. Our youth nights, we always have like a time of playing, and then we have like a little bit of a teaching time, but we also have a sharing time. And the sharing time, I think, is what has been so amazingly beneficial to the kids that have come, because they're able to share their hearts. They're able to share, you know, what's going on in their lives, what's hard, what they're afraid of, what the challenges are. Maybe even things that they don't feel comfortable sharing with their parents at first, and they just want to share with their peer group. That has been amazing for us. It's been amazing for our kids to be around that. And what has been so amazing about that And what gives me hope is that I see now that like some of the parents have started to come and hang out. And so the moms and the dads actually decided to start rotating weeks. So the dads come one week, the moms come another week. And some of them are saying, you guys are my people. I don't really have anybody else I talk to. And we're like, yes, this is what it's about right here. And this is what the world is losing if we don't start fighting for this. Like, we need to fight to be connected with one another. And we need to figure out ways to be able to do that. Because if we lose those connections, the fear is just going to take over. And I feel like that is what has really, accelerated. I mean, it was already happening, but then the pandemic has accelerated it, where because people have been separated from one another for so long and in so many ways, that they are now afraid to, like, how do I come back out? How do we come back together? So what gives me hope is that what we're doing is working. And my desire, my hope, my prayer is to see more of this kind of thing happening. Because we've figured out, like at our church, okay, people don't necessarily want to come together at our church for a group, but they will go to somebody's house. And I'm like, of course they would. Of course, because this is how I grew up. This is how all of us grew up. We went to each other's homes. We had each other over for dinner. Kids are running around neighborhoods, just, I don't know if you were like a free roaming kid, but like, in the neighborhood I grew up, one of the neighborhoods I grew up in, it was always like that. We were just running around constantly. And then, when the street lights come on, like, you got to go home, and you might have a kid with you coming home with you. But, I think if we could get back to, and it's not going back, because we're never going back to the way things were. But if we can find new ways to connect like that, and I mean, just like this project, to me, this is reconnecting people. It's reconnecting our hearts, and it's reminding us how much we have in common. It's reminding us like how valuable it is to have human connection, and we can all have different perspectives. But I see it as a valuable, we need to have each other's perspective. We need to keep communicating. We need to have time to sit down and have discussions like this. So I'm very appreciative of this time with you. I'm finished.
Well, first of all, thank you for creating a space for kids to be kids. I always think that kids are growing up way too fast. And in today's world, forced to, be adults when they really just need to be kids. And so thank you for creating that space. And I can definitely see the hope that you're not only building for those young people, but I can tell that you're learning so much from them too. And back to your point about connection, I really do see why that gives you hope. But, the fact that you share that with me is something I really will cherish. So thank you for telling me how you're finding hope today.
Thanks.
All right, I'm going to give this to you.
Great. Okay, Anna, what is something that makes you feel hopeful right now?
Well, it's going to sound a little cheesy, but I think just being here and getting to learn more about you has really given me a lot of hope. I have a lot to do every day. I probably have one of the longest to-do lists, like in Orlando. And it's a combination of like things that I want to do. Like there's so many things that as just a human, I want to get better at. I want to be a stronger communicator. I want to learn more languages. I want to play an instrument. Like there's all these things that I personally aspire to do. I want to become a parent, but then there's also the community that I serve, and every issue you can think of, my office manages, whether it's folks who are struggling to make ends meet or trying to get them their benefits or get them into housing and kind of making sure they don't experience some of the heartaches that we talked about already, making sure that folks are taken care of. And then you have issues that small businesses face that are really wonky and regulation oriented, all the way to some of these big hot topic controversial issues that come before me in the legislature. And so I have to be able to, mesh and mold into all these environments, into these spaces, and it can get really demoralizing sometimes, because no matter how kind you are or how intentionally you work to be, there's always rejection, there's always loss, there's always failure. And so you mentioned earlier how important those little moments are, and I really resonate with that. And so I think what gives me hope is that despite all this struggle and moments where you want to give up, there's those little moments of maybe a funny joke that someone says, or a sweet moment where someone brings you their extra cookies they bought somewhere. I mean, we have folks who come by our office just to drop off sweets or drop off cards and little surprises for my cats or someone, and the fact that people are looking out for you like that. And again, back to that human connection, it really does remind you to find hope in those little moments and not get bogged down by those bigger problems. We can solve those problems. Mm-hmm. And I agree with the point you made before too, that my success is not tied to someone else's failure. We actually can all be successful together. And I think as more people subscribe to that mantra, we're going to build a more equitable and hopeful society where everyone has a chance to be themselves, to be loved, to have security and joy. And so it's that vision that gives me a lot of hope. Mm-hmm. So I'm finished.
That's good. Thank you for sharing that. I definitely share your sentiments about like wanting to create that, and how relationship is just key to that. So I appreciate all that you do, and it's really been a joy talking to you today. Really, truly. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been an amazing time to spend with you. You are truly a remarkable woman who has gone through so many experiences, the good and the bad. And you have been able to find so much joy through it all. And I know that your 2 little boys are so lucky to have you as a mom. And the incredible courage you have and the kindness you have is going to be something to form their future. And we need more people like that. And so thank you for taking the time to spend with me and being so courageous with me. It's definitely something that I will hold on to and reflect on as I go through the rest of my life. And so thank you for that.
Thank you. Anna, this has truly been a joy for me. It has been amazing meeting you, hearing your story. I'm so impressed by your willingness to become a public servant and the reasons you went into it. I think you are going to do amazing things. I love that you are such a connector. I can tell you're very warm-hearted, and you truly care for people. It's evident. I think you probably had an amazing mother, and were an amazing daughter. And I think you still are an amazing daughter, who is, I'm sure, making your mother proud. So thank you again for having this conversation with me. It's really been amazing to talk with you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Appreciate you.
You too. You too. It's been really nice.